Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, news writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and writer for Sports Illustrated. I definitely messed up my intro there, but hey, it's early on a Sunday morning that we're here, and that just goes with it, right?
Hey man, the panic I felt when I started this show. So for people that are not watching on YouTube, we have the little video thing, the little waiting loop that we do, and that's usually enough time for me to kind of take a look at what our outline says is my intro, and then I can make sure I'm comfortable with that. I can hit play, and we're good to go. Well, I completely forgot to pull up the outline. So the moment of panic I had when I hit start, I look over at my second screen here, and I just see the box score from that dominant victory over the Atlanta Hawks, and I go, oh God, I'm racking my head. Please remember it. Please remember what you're supposed to. It's not just you. It's not just you. And that's the realities of podcasting, folks. We think you got everything ready to go, and nope. No, you just went screw up the intro.
No, that was me too, because I need to switch up my intro bit. I think what throws me off is I use the word writer twice in like one sentence. So we're gonna have to go back to the lab that one and tweak it a bit. But hey, it's Sunday morning. We're after like pretty much almost a mini break of basketball, we'll call it. And the Pistons had a dominant win in their only game of the week, and I'm ready to be back for a normal NBA week.
Yeah, me too. I was just gonna say, like, this has been really weird. Even the cadence now coming back after the NBA Cup kind of tournament schedule that went on last week. The Pistons played the Atlanta Hawks on a Friday night, and then they don't play again till Monday night against the Boston Celtics. Like you said, there's still a 2-day break here in between those two games. And I guess if you think that the Pistons beat the Atlanta Hawks so badly because they had fresh legs, like you got another exciting game coming up on Monday. But I'm ready to get some more, maybe not like the back-to-backs, but like, 2 games, 3 days, that sort of thing going again. Let's get back into the regular cadence. I've missed NBA basketball. Well, Pistons NBA basketball. The Cup's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And the back-to-back last weekend, I think, screwed up the Pistons' schedule a bit because there were games on Monday, but the Pistons didn't play. So yeah, it's been, I don't know. And there's like no, obviously we're much bigger basketball guys than we are like football guys, but it's also been, there hasn't been much football this week with college, the conference championships last week, and the Lions play later today against the Rams, which I'm excited for, but it's sort of been a down sports week, which I guess is nice, but also when the weather is this cold, I'm like, give us something. And I'm just ready for the Pistons to be back.
Well, let's just talk about that Atlanta game because good Lord, did they beat the brakes off the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are a good team. I thought that they were going to win again. I did not think that it was going to go like this. So it was a 142-115 victory, as I'm sure you all know. You had your starters, Tobias Harris, 9 points, Duncan Robinson, 15 points, 5 for 10, Jalen Duren, 14 points, 6 for 10, Cade Cunningham, 15 points, 5 for 10, Asar Thompson, 12 points, 5 for 9. Like, this was just an even and utterly dominant effort out of the Detroit Pistons. What did you see out of this one? And then we can kind of dive into the nitty-gritty of it.
So I think we've definitely talked about before just how balanced this roster is in terms of offensive output, and you're not going to get that every night, obviously. And we've seen nights where the starters, specific players in the starters group are off and someone on the bench shines, and vice versa. The bench isn't giving you much, but this was just everyone was contributing in one way or another. Like it was a blowout. So obviously the end of the bench guys got in, but not just it were 8 players in double figures. Every single player that was available scored, including like Marcus Sasser with 7 points in his 4 minutes of garbage time, and Paul Reed played as well. And And yeah, it was like a historic balanced scoring attack. The Pistons tweeted out after that the Pistons became just the third team in the NBA history to have 12 players score at least 7 points. So that's just incredible. And we've talked about the depth that this roster has, and obviously with that comes some rotation questions that we'll always talk about and are always important. But when you have a roster like this that everyone can help, everyone can score, everyone can contribute, it really parlays itself into winning games. And now we're seeing this team sitting at 20-5. They're the only team in the NBA with 20 wins besides the Oklahoma City Thunder. So it's just incredible. And I know this is one game we're focusing on this week, so super small sample size, but the balance of this roster is something like we've talked about before. So I think it's nice to see it shine as incredibly as it did against Atlanta.
Like, don't look at the box score. Name the one Pistons player who did not shoot at or over 50% from the floor in that game. There's only one, by the way, of the 14 guys that played.
Okay.
One.
I literally have the box score on my other screen, so that's why you see me looking this way. For those of you watching, I'm gonna guess
13 players. Sorry, 13 guys played.
I'm gonna guess Javonte Green, and I promise I did not look.
You nailed it. He was 3 for 7. So he's right there. One more make, he's over 50%. The entire team shot 58% from the floor, 41% from 3 on only 29 attempts. They made more threes than the Atlanta Hawks did. They took 7 less. You know, like if we could go back to that Boston loss that we talked about, one of the big reasons Boston beat the Pistons was, well, they shot, you know, somewhat similar in total threes. They just made a bunch more. Oh, that's what the Pistons just did to the Atlanta Hawks. They got to the line almost as much. So Hawks had 31 free throws, Pistons 29. Pistons were 83% from the free throw line. Like, this was just truly a dominant performance. And I want to talk a little bit about what we've seen out of Jaden Ivey. It was fun watching Marcus Sasser, so maybe we can overanalyze that too. But I kind of want to, why don't we just take like the 10,000 foot view here, because this is a Pistons team that's won a lot of close games early on in this season, but this sort of trend kind of happens, and you've seen other teams pull this off, and I'm wondering if the Pistons are going to start pulling this off as well. And that's just it's a young team. You're winning all these close games early on in the year, and as the year progresses, you get that confidence, you get that chemistry going, and suddenly those close wins aren't so close anymore. You start really running teams out of the gym. You start pushing up that margin of victory the rest of the way, and suddenly a team that looks like, hey, maybe they were overperforming a little bit when they're sitting there at 20-5. Well, maybe now they're just that good as you move into February and March and then April into the playoffs. And is that kind of the path you're seeing out of the Pistons right now? I don't want to overanalyze this one game like this, but that really was such a dominant win. And it seems like they've been getting more comfortable victories as the seasons have been going on too. So I don't know. Give me the 10,000 foot view. What are you seeing on this Pistons season right now that we're 25 games in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that they're a good team. They're a team that's going to contend in this conference, and they should be. I do not look at like odds or anything, but I think they should be favored to get the 1 seed for the Eastern Conference, because a lot of the other teams in this group have had problems of their own, and the Pistons have just been the most consistent, even as they have battled numerous injuries to numerous players throughout the start of the season. And yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of those wins were close, and we see such a dominant victory over Atlanta and a few other times as well. I think this Boston game on Monday will be a good litmus test, because that's a team that obviously they've lost to before this season. A tough team that they struggled with. So it's a great opportunity to, I guess, get a little more data into this viewpoint and see how they can manage playing these tough games for the rest of the season. But I think they can compete with anyone in the East, and I think that they're undoubtedly the best team in the East right now, standings aside. And it's just incredible what they're putting together. And I mean, we'll talk about it more as we get further along in the season, but things are working right now. And I know that the Pistons are always in trade talks with bringing in, we don't need to go into the Anthony Davis stuff because that just doesn't make sense, but really any player that comes up, the Pistons will be a candidate. Do you want to break what you have going on right now? Like, I see them more as maybe making some moves around the margins to add without giving up too much. Because right now it's just things are clicking and you don't really want to mess with that. Like, they're just an unbelievably good team, which is so awesome to say after the season that they had just 2 years ago at this point.
Yeah, and you start looking at the other teams in the East right now. So they got 2 games on the Knicks, and that's pretty much the class of the East at the moment. So the Knicks are sitting there at 18-7. The Celtics are third. They're at 15-10. The Pistons have 5 games on the 3 seed right now. And I mean, you look at the teams that are down there, and it seems like, maybe the Magic are a team that's underperforming right now and might be able to kind of catch back up. The Cavs for sure sit at 15-11, and they're dealing with some injury issues. Evan Mobley's going to be out a couple of weeks now too. But outside of those 2 teams, it's a bunch of teams that are kind of right where you thought they'd be. The Raptors are overperforming, but they're a solid roster. The 76ers with Embiid, kicking around, still kind of healthy, 14-10. I mean, the Heat, 14-11. Hawks, 14-12. They just beat them. Like, the East really is kind of shaking out the way that most of us, I think, kind of expected it would be, except for the Pistons sitting right there all the way at the top. And I think that it's probably just time to start giving the team some flowers. You can't even say what they lack in star power they make up for in depth, because they've got possibly the best player in the Eastern Conference right now. They've got one of the best centers in the Eastern Conference offensively right now. They've got 2 all-NBA caliber defenders in Asar Thompson and Isaiah Stewart. They got Ron Holland, who's up in I think he's still top 5 in the league in steals per game off the bench, and he's starting to get some offensive firepower going as well. Jaden Ivey getting healthier. Duncan Robinson's one of the best shooters in the league. Like, this is just, they're a well-balanced team. They're unusual in the modern NBA, but they're really talented. I think you just have to start giving them those flowers now. They're just that talented. They are pretty much this good.
I think last year was almost a proof of concept type thing. And obviously they overperform more than any of our expectations, but the front office and new head coach and JB Bickerstaff sees what works. And to us that were watching every game, like, we knew where they needed to get better. And you have the changes to the roster over this offseason that, I mean, we're good acquisitions, but I think we collectively, like, the general consensus was we weren't sure about it, mainly because of the absence of Malik Beasley and everything that went on there. But you bring in Duncan Robinson, you bring in Karis LeVert, and these guys that really, really do help alongside Cade and Duran, and Tobias is still there making big buckets when he's healthy. So I think it goes to prove, even though there wasn't that sort of splashy move in the off season, or the Pistons haven't made that deal yet, you don't really have to get to this level. Like, we're 25 games through this season. That's over a quarter of the way through. Obviously a lot of basketball left to be played, but this is a team that can surely go up with anyone in the East. And I even take it a step further to say anyone in the NBA outside of the Thunder. But we saw the Thunder get beat by the Spurs last night, and they obviously have a generational player But Cade Cunningham is undoubtedly one of the best guards in the Eastern Conference and the NBA at large. So this team can compete with the best of them. And I think it really goes to show the development of all these young guys in-house and just over time, them gelling together and the whole group just clicking in general. I mean, it's just an incredible job. And who would have thought that they would have 20 wins through 25 games?
I love this comment here from Sharon Dalton in the live chat. Says the Pistons are a good team. For me to be great, you have to beat a healthy Boston, Cleveland, Atlanta, and New York. Love it. I agree. I think that's a great way to put it. The Pistons are a very good team right now, and it remains to be seen if they're going to kind of elevate themselves into being that sort of great team. That said, I think a good team can get to the Eastern Conference Finals, especially this year. Like you look at that list that Sharon gave us here. Boston, Tatum's out. Atlanta, I think you could kind of toss them out. They tend to be better without Trae Young, and that's been the case for, I don't want to say a few years, but at least in recent history. So I do think Atlanta's a better team right now when they're not healthy, though Kristaps would be a bit of a game changer for them, I do think. So that would be interesting. New York, we know that they set up pretty well again. So I think that Cleveland game, they do play them coming up, don't they? Sometime within the next month, I believe they have Cleveland. That's one that I've got circled and I'm watching for, because the last time the Cavs played the Pistons, they got them pretty good. And that was a different team, respectfully. I mean, earlier on in the year, that was a different Pistons team than the one we're watching right now. So I think that one's going to be a really interesting game to watch. It's a good matchup. You could go double big or maybe you try to run them with Tobias Harris. I don't know how JB's going to approach it, but I think that that'll be a good game and a good litmus test for this team moving forwards. Three guys that we have to talk about here. Let's start with Caris LeVert because you brought him up. For all of the struggles that he had to start the season, he's really rounding into form. On the year, 9.4 points, 3.1 assists. He's shooting 46% from the floor, 42% from three. Caris LeVert has been solid, if not very good, in about 20 minutes a night so far this season.
Yeah, 100%. And if you just look at his last 5 games, I mean, he had a stinker in that loss against the Bucks, but other than, and quiet night and the win against Portland too, but he scored in double figures in the rest of those games. And the win against Atlanta, not the blowout one, the 1-point win from the start of the month, he was 3 for 4 from 3, had 14 points. And he's been a little up and down, especially from 3 as he started out, and he battled injuries of his own. But yeah, I think he's just turning into that consistent guy that they need him to be off the bench. I don't think he's ever going to be a consistent 15-point a night scorer for this team, but I don't think they really need him to be. They just need him to be a guy who can knock down shots off the bench. And hey, if he goes for 20 points in a night, that is only going to help you win that game. So yeah, it's been a little bit of an adjustment period for Caris, but he's played really well over this last stretch specifically.
And I've really liked his fit next to either of Ivy or both Ivy and Jenkins. Like it's a little small having him play up a position at that 3, but I do think he handles himself fairly well. He's been a pretty good defender, not an amazing defender or anything like that. You know, he's not Ron Holland coming off the bench and getting up in the top 5 in steals, but he's been positionally solid. He gives a good effort on that end. He's got good length. He's fairly quick, so he can stay in front of guys. I think he's done well on that end, and having, when they go with that smaller lineup, sticking him up at the 3, it not only helps take pressure off of a guy like Jaden Ivey, but it really spreads out the ball handling ability from a defensive perspective. Like you got Dennis Jenkins that can take you off a dribble drive or a pick and roll. Jaden Ivey, same thing. Caris LeVert, same thing. Like that's 3 guys you got to address. And JB has them all kind of bringing it up equally, you know, just depending on who's not getting pressured. They can all initiate offense. I think those have been really fun looks, even though we've not gotten too many minutes of them. Speaking of Jaden Ivey, let's do the 10 game review of Jaden Ivey, because that's where we're at this year. So he's at 7.8 points, 1.4 assists, 2.6 rebounds. He's shooting about 46% from the floor and 38.5% from three, 87.5% from the free throw line, though only getting there 1.6 times per game. What have you thought on the early returns here from Jaden Ivey?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's still, obviously, with the minutes that he's getting, there's room to grow. And over these 10 games, we've wanted more from Ivy at times and been happy with his output at other times. So, and I think, again, that was to be expected. And over your first 10 games back, there shouldn't be any panic. But where I'm specifically optimistic about Ivy, and it's not a huge sample size, is that 38.5% mark from three last year in 30 games before he went down with that injury. He was just under 41% on just over 5 attempts per game. So I think a big question with Ivy coming back was that leap as a 3-point shooter real? And obviously you add the injury into the mix. How is that going to change things? And much smaller sample size so far. Ivy's taking 2.6 threes a game over his 10 games back, but he's been efficient there. And I think he's been good from the floor as well. I mean, room to grow there also, but I think for Ivy to, who knows if he's going to be in the starting lineup the rest of the season, but just to be a key piece of this team moving forward, I think he needs to shoot the ball like we saw him do last year. And I think he's definitely done so far. And obviously a huge leap from his first 2 seasons where he was right around 34% from three in both of those years. So that's where I'm specifically optimistic about Ivy. And I think he should only get better as more time goes on.
Yeah, I think the good is the shooting, absolutely. I think he looks stronger than he did last year. It seems like he took some of that rehab time for his lower body to just get really big in the upper body. Like his biceps are massive now. So he looks bigger. I think you've seen that. He hasn't quite had the explosiveness that he had last year on his drives, but he's been more physical when he's done it. So as much explosiveness as it seems like he's missing, he was a 46% guy from the floor last year. He's 45.8% this year. He's right there, right? He's shooting about the same from the floor. And I think that has a lot to do with that physicality. So assuming that explosion comes back to him, then I think you got a pretty good floor here for a scorer offensively, which is really nice to see. And that said, we need that explosion to come back, right? He struggled to turn the corner on defenders, and that's something to watch moving forwards. I think I've liked his effort quite a bit defensively. I'm curious what you've thought on that end, but he's always been a player that maybe loses an offensive player or two on help, right? When he's off ball, he tends to lose a little bit of focus. That's still there, but he just seems really engaged on that end of the floor, which I've been very encouraged by. He's fighting through screens, I think, better than he ever has. And I don't know if that's just a sheer effort thing or if there was a technique that he worked on, but I think he gets around those better than he used to, which is a great sign for him, given that he's a little bit bigger. That's more mass that you have to get around that screener. So it's a little surprising. So, yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of good and a lot of bad, right? And he's still at about just under 15 minutes a night. So you figure that there's probably some sort of minutes cap on him right now. When that lifts off, it's up to him, up to the training staff, right? I'm sure Jaden would want to go for a full 30 minutes or probably 48 minutes if he could. He's an NBA basketball player. I'm sure he doesn't want to sit down. But that training staff is probably watching for a couple of key indicators. And I think it's fair to say, like, you can see it too, right? He's not as explosive around the hoop. He's not as quick, right, when he's got the ball on the perimeter. It's getting there. It's not quite to where it was. So I think that once that starts coming around, like it was with Asar Thompson last year, he's on that minutes restriction coming off the bench. Ivy goes down. He's starting, but he's still getting 20 to 25 a night. And then as the season progressed, he started looking a lot more athletically like the Asar Thompson we remember. Then he starts getting up closer to 30 minutes, and we get into the playoffs with a full minute load. I expect Ivy's probably going to be in the same pathway. Again, as traumatic as the injury was, no ligament stuff. The ligament stuff's where you really worry about the explosiveness, right? If just a bone break, just with the scare quotes there, but just a bone break. So he'll get back to where he was. I've got full faith in that. It'll just still take a little bit of time.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to transition into this question from Arthur Cease on who's the better defender between Duncan Robinson and Jaden Ivey. I mean, I think either it's a tough question because obviously neither of these players are known for their defensive ability. And we've seen, as Duncan Robinson has been the starting lineup, we've seen opponents target him and be successful with that at times. But we've also seen Duncan Robinson really compete defensively too. And he's never going to be like a great defender by any means, but he's been good at times throughout the year. And I think you can say a similar thing about Ivy. I think in these 10 games, you've definitely noticed some improvement there. And I don't think he's ever going to be a great defender either. Just comparing the two, I'd say in theory, Ivy should be the better defender just because he's quicker, he's more athletic. But Duncan does have that length too. So it's a tough question. And especially when you're like, I don't want to discount what Duncan Robinson has done, but I think we haven't seen Jaden Ivey targeted a ton so far this year. So I think because we have seen that with Duncan, I'm going to give the slight lean to Ivy here. But like you said, Ivy has seemed to gotten bigger over his rehab process and as he ramped up and returned to action. And I think the defensive end will be really important for both of these players because obviously that's a mismatch that teams are going to try to exploit, and you've got to be able to get through screens as teams are trying to like switch them and everything like that. And I think in prior years you saw, like you were talking about, you saw Ivy just run straight into screens before, but you're not seeing that as much this year. He's being more slippery, whether he's going over, under, and it does look like an improvement there. So that's really, I think, where both of them can just try to make an impact there, just not getting lost or not being absorbed in that contact as well. But yeah, when you compare the two, it's tough because they're never going to be the best defender on the floor. But I think Ivy should be the better defender.
Yeah, I'm gonna somewhat disagree with you here because it's saying all right, neither is really gonna be the best defender on the court. That's true, but that's a wide range of bad. And look, I love Duncan Robinson, what he's done for the team this year. But speaking on NBA terms, because Duncan, if by some unearthly reason you are listening to this podcast, you are a far better athlete than I, my friend. But as far as NBA athletes go, cement shoes for Duncan Robinson. Can't really move, can't stay in front of guys. The two saving graces for Duncan that are awesome for the type of player that he is. He tries. He gives a good effort, especially off ball. Love him for that. He's trying to get to the right spot. Oftentimes he just physically cannot get there, which is a big time limitation. And he started to take some charges. If he can keep that up, that's going to be great. Start doing the little Tim Hardaway Jr. thing for the Pistons. I would love to see that as a trend continue because he started to do it past 5-10 games, and I'd like to see that stick around. So yeah, Jaden Ivey's a much better defender. Jaden Ivey's not a good defender. I think Ivy, even right now, if you're only looking on ball, he's probably neutral to slightly above average. Like Jaden Ivey will stay in front of a ball handler pretty well, especially now that he's getting around screens better. you can't screen him off as easily. I think that Jaden Ivey is actually a solid, if not all right, to pretty good on-ball defender. His issues tend to be off ball, like we already mentioned. He can get back cut, he'll lose a shooter, he can get screamed off where he's looking away. Stuff like that tends to happen. And that's been a through line throughout his whole career. But if he's a little bit more bulky, if he's able to get around those screens when he's guarding ball handlers, you can do some fun stuff having him take maybe the not the Jalen Brunson, but the next best ball handler, and just ask him to kind of be a pit bull. He's been good at that in the past. He's looked like he's pretty good at that now. I think he's also, so YouTube user brings up exactly where I was going to go. Rebounder. Jaden Ivey's always been a pretty good defensive rebounder, especially last year. And I think you're starting to see that again now. He's averaging actually more rebounds than assists early on in this season because he just attacks the glass really well. So I think Jaden Ivey's a much better defender. The issue in terms of what Arthur here brings up as a follow-up question, he says going to be a tough call for the starting lineup when Jaden Ivey gets healthy. The tough call is the shooting. Because yes, Jaden Ivey at 38%, 38.5% from three on the season so far. He was a little over 40% last year, but it's how they get the shots. Duncan Robinson, you can move around. He can shoot off the move. He can shoot off the dribble. He can shoot just about in any situation. He's better, right, when he's stationary. He's better when he's kind of doing that one dribble off a screen, that little slide dribble that he can do off to one side to get space for his jump shot. He's better at those two things than he is at curls. I think that he's getting better. He's shot better in recent weeks as a curl shooter than he had earlier on in the year. But understand that, like, for Robinson, when I say he's better at one form of shooting than another, that means, like, if he's catch and shoot from the corner, he's probably over 50%. If he's taking a curl, he's probably at like 38%. It's still really good. You know what I mean? He's an incredible shooter in a variety of different ways. Jaden Ivey, catch and shoot guy, stationary catch and shoot. Every now and then, maybe you could get him off the dribble, but his feet still get a little bit wide, even if he's trying to pull up off of a ball screen. So the shooting's really the hold up there, because Duncan Robinson, you could use him as a sharpshooter. Jaden Ivey, he can space a little bit, but he's still more of a get to the rim type of guy. He is certainly a better defender, though. I really think that shot is absolutely vital for the functioning of this starting lineup when Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren are both out there together. So I think it's going to have to stay kind of the way it is. The way it is got you 20 wins in 25 games. And I don't want to be that reductionist, but a little bit I will be. It's working really well. The elite shooting from Duncan Robinson's a big reason why I wouldn't personally want to shake that up. But I do really look forward to the days where you're getting Ivy closer to, 20 to 25 minutes off the bench instead of the 15 that he's on right now. I think that's going to be really fun.
Agreed there. I think the interesting maybe like counter argument to that is last season you had your best shooter coming off the bench in Malik Beasley, and you obviously different types of players, but can Jaden Ivey be that like Tim Hardaway Jr.? I think THJ is better of a movement shooter than Ivy is, but maybe he can close that gap a bit. Hardaway shot 37% on just under 6 3-point attempts last year. So could it work if you do decide to bring your best shooter off the bench? I think it could, but I'm still in the boat of this team has won 20 games in 25 tries. So you don't want to rock the boat. And I think Ivy is going to get more minutes as time goes on either way. But Duncan Robinson has been needed, like you said, next to with Cade, next to Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren. So you don't really want to change things up right now. So it is a tough call, like Arthur mentioned.
And keeping Ivy off the bench, but like upping his minutes quite a bit, it also opens up kind of a fun rotational thing, which would be Jalen Duren getting non-Cade minutes. right? So Laz Jackson actually brought this up on the Pistons Pulse in the most recent episode over there. But you want to see now if Jalen Duren's going to be the second star. Like, okay, go out there, start doing it on your own a little bit. Well, that makes having Jaden Ivey out there with him makes his life a little bit easier. Ivey's got pretty good pick and roll chemistry with Duren as well. Obviously not up to the level of Cade, but Cade's also a much better playmaker. And Ivey can take some of that pressure off of JD too when you get those sorts of lineups. So if you could push Ivey up over 20 minutes a night off the bench when he's feeling full, healthy, and ready to go, and you start maybe getting Duren a couple minutes without Cade here and there, that's a really fun kind of bench starter pairing that you can do as well. And that just only furthers the depth that this team really has. Let's get to let's just start right off with this because we've already kind of talked about it. Let's just make it explicit. This is from Gregory Wagner. Says, how do you envision our shooting guard position shaking out and moving forward with Ivey getting off the minutes restriction and getting to full game speed? So let's just make it explicit. What do you think that shooting guard rotation is going to look like? Knowing, of course, that Ivey's kind of a combo guard, right? You can play him as a 2, as a 1, depending on how you want your rotation to look.
Yeah. It's tough because I'm just trying to decide whether I think that Ivy will be input into the starting lineup at some point this season, which I think before the season, the answer to that question would have been yes. But with this start and Ivy missing a lot of time to start the year and coming back on the minutes restriction and everything, it makes it a little bit tough. So I think my best guess will be that the starting 5 will remain the same pending health throughout the rest of the year. That said, I think you can see Ivy, we're going to see him get more minutes, and you can see him get off the bench a little earlier, which, like you mentioned, Wes, opens up some cool things, and Duren playing more minutes not next to Cade and giving Ivy more on-ball opportunities to increase his scoring and just get those reps as well. So I think it is difficult because Duncan Robinson isn't really a shooting guard, but he's sort of playing that role. And I mean, he is a shooting guard archetype, but just because of his size, he's more of a forward. And you have Tobias, Asar, and Duren next to him as well. So it is a big starting lineup. So it's not necessarily traditional or normal by any means, but it helps defensively as well when you have Asar out there, and Tobias obviously can help too. And we've seen some improvement from Jalen Duren as a defender as well this year. So I think it'll be interesting to see moving forward, but I sort of just see things going as they are right now, which is just a testament to how incredible this start has been.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think my prediction of what's going to happen, exactly as you said, Duncan's going to stay out there as the starting shooting guard. But instead of having that first rotation being Isaiah Stewart and Karis LeVert, I think that first rotation is going to be Isaiah Stewart and Jaden Ivey. I feel quite a bit more confident in that trio of Cade, Asar Thompson, and Jalen Duren. If you have 2 pretty good shooters around that, along with Cade, I feel just as confident in that sort of setup as I do with the 1 elite shooter and 1 below average shooter in Tobias Harris. I think that kind of equates more or less the same. So getting Isaiah Stewart out there with the floor spacing he's been able to provide alongside of Jaden Ivey, who's also a very good kick out threat, I think that kind of levels it out. So if you really wanted to do a full, crazy starting lineup change and do that, right? Okay, fine. But I think more realistically, that's going to be your first rotation off the bench. So you're going to start off how you have been: Cade, Robinson, Asar, Harris, Duren. First rotation's probably going to get in Ivy and Stu. So you're looking at Cade, Ivy, Asar, Stu, Duren. Get that for quite a few minutes. Probably start sprinkling in Karis LeVert, Ron Holland, shift Stu back up to the 5 to make some space for, another wing or a guard as well. I think that it's actually it's not that hard to do. I think you just end up taking some minutes away from Karis LeVert, shifting them over to Jaden Ivey, which is something I would imagine our most fans would kind of be in favor of and excited about. And as long as Ivy can continue to justify that, he keeps getting better. It seems like every night, getting his feet back under him. I think that's great. He's a weapon that you can have off the bench, which all good teams have, right? The Pistons don't really have that right now. So if Jaden Ivey can become that guy, that's a really important role, I think, for the playoffs. Let's get to this one here from YouTube user, because I do think it's a good point talking about Duncan Robinson. It says that the style of play changes in the playoffs, and having a player that will be hunted because of his physical limitations is a much bigger problem. Yeah, I'm pretty worried about Duncan Robinson as a defender in the playoffs. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I agree too. I think it's a fair point, but I think that even with that, you can't have Duncan off the floor for much more than he already is, just because of the shooting that he provides. And I mean, we know that that'll come up big in the playoffs. So it's sort of a risk reward kind of thing, and it's just about figuring out how to hide it on the defensive end, which is going to be harder because, like YouTube user said, he's going to be hunted. But maybe there are some ways to get around it. I definitely think no matter what those ways are, they'll be perfect and fully solve the problem at all times. But I think you're not going to see Duncan Robinson's like minutes go down too much, if at all, in the playoffs, just because he's the best candidate on this team to make big shots, which is obviously needed in the playoffs.
Yeah, you really need his shot making, right? So I think I do think it's a risk. His size lets you be more creative with how you hide him. Like it's not like you've got a 6'2" player who's also a terrible defender. This isn't quite like a Trae Young thing, right? Or not I guess we're picking on Trae Young this podcast. I don't mean it that way. But like for as amazing and incredible as an offensive player he is, he's 6 feet tall and he can't stay in front of anybody. So when you get to the playoffs, that's really tough. Where do you put him, right? You have to stick him on a guard, but many teams have 2 guards that are at least threats offensively. So that's not a great idea. You want to put him somewhere else, and now he's at a size disadvantage. At least with Duncan, you don't have that problem. You can hide him on a smaller guard if you want. Yeah, the guard's going to run away from him, but he's going to try and stick with him. He'll put the effort in, and he does have length. You can't take that away from him. You can stick him on a bigger player because, again, he's got length and size, and you can't really take that away from him. So he does at least have an asset defensively, which – like even comparing to, say, Malik Beasley last year against the Knicks, that's not an asset Malik had, right? He gave just as much effort defensively. I think he was a little bit better as an on-ball defender as well. And he famously was able to get some of those steals, which was fun to watch. But Duncan's bigger, right? Like there is a physical gift that he has that it does have value defensively. He's tall. He's got pretty long arms, good wingspan. And you can use that. You can leverage that. So I think it's a problem to watch, but successful teams have hidden worse, I guess is the way to put that. And so I we'll see what happens when you get to the playoffs. Is one of those. I think that it can be done. It's certainly a challenge, though. Let's get to this next one here. This was from D and No 3 in the DVP comments. It says, wondering if you know what Duran's offseason was like. Did he work out with any past legends to make this leap? So we know that he worked with Cade Cunningham quite a bit. They did that trip. I think it was to Denver, right? They did a trip somewhere.
They were in Italy for a portion,
okay.
And they were doing probably something else. I know Hunter Patterson from The Athletic wrote a really good piece on their trip to Italy. So if anyone hasn't read that, definitely go check that out.
And there was a Pistons legend too that did work a little bit with JD over the summer, wasn't there?
Why am I blanking right now?
Rasheed Wallace. Sorry, I
Who
was
am I
trying to
missing?
see. This is come on. This is what
Oh.
happens when you do the live. I'm out here trying to be a good host, tee up my guy,
I
and then we fumbled the bag.
I
No, so
I blew
Rasheed
it.
Wallace.
I blew it, but no, I mean Rasheed, the Memphis connection there makes sense. And yeah, I think that I think we sort of paraphrase this question here because just because of character limits, but D in no 03 was asking too if there's any Pistons legends or NBA legends we'd like to see him work out with. So maybe going into the player comp realm, and I mean Jalen Duren has got a ton, like Dwight Howard. Wes, I think you brought up Amari Stoudemire, which
I
is
did, but it wasn't original. Someone brought that
that's
up. I
okay.
saw it
It's a good
online, and
one.
I cannot remember who it was to give them the credit. But I
It,
do think it's a really good one.
it is a good one. And yeah, another one that I thought of was maybe like LaMarcus Aldridge, and I think he has more of a shot than Duran will ever have, even though, but he didn't shoot threes, so like more of that mid range type of thing. So maybe you see that as well. I'm trying to think of modern players too. I mean, hey, we know Andre Drummond is still rooting for the Pistons when he's not playing against them. So maybe that's one too. I think my favorite one is the Stoudemire comparison that you brought up. But hey, if he can work with Dwight Howard, that would be awesome. I think Dwight Howard will, like, Jalen Duren is nowhere near the defender that Dwight Howard was, and that's not a knock on Duren. It's just how good Howard was. But I think Jalen Duren could have an argument that he's even better of an offensive player than Dwight Howard was at this day, and he's still young and can grow there. But if he can work with a guy like Dwight defensively, I think that would be awesome.
What's so interesting to me about Duran is like that this truly is one of those cases offensively. I think if you flashed backwards, right? If we just like go back in time 30 years, he's a power forward, right?
Hmm.
And I think that that's kind of where my mind keeps going because I'm trying to think of specifically former Pistons
Chris Webber.
that so that was the name that came up, not as like a comp, but as if I could take something from a former player and impart it on Jalen Duren over the offseason. I think
Mhm.
the ability of C Webb to kind of take guys off the bounce just to continue leveling that up that Duren's already shown, that'd be a good one. You know, the other one I thought of, maybe this is a little off the wall because this player was much, much better before he got to the Pistons because he was so injured early on in his career. Antonio McDyess. How,
Okay.
because when he was with the Spurs, I mean, this wasn't a shooter. He had a mid-range game. I think that'd be a good one to give JD. But he was incredible athlete, big-time lob threat, real physical player. And I mean, his best season was probably 21 or so points, 10 rebounds, couple assists. He was a really, really good defender at that time. So again, I think that you've got to kind of couch this and say, well, it's not going to be 2+ blocks per game, right? Like that's not where this is heading for JD, and that's okay. He's good enough offensively where we can kind of stop concerning ourselves with that too much. That's what's been so exciting about this development out of him. But offensively, yeah, like if you could just kind of take what we've been seeing and scale it up. Arthur here in the live chat says, I never thought I would be so excited to have Jalen Duren start trying to take over games. Yeah, and I'm right there with them, right? Like that's what I want to see. We talked about it last episode. Like start forcing some shots. He's that good. And at this point, he needs to stake his claim, I think, at being that legitimate second guy. So yeah, let's start having to force the issue. It was nice to see it against the Atlanta Hawks. Did he take a bad shot or two? Yes. Did he still shoot 60% from the floor? Yes. And that's my point, right? Like it's going to happen. He'll force a look or two, and that's oh, well, that's great. He's a center. If he's up over 60% or right at it, we're pretty good. And that's right around 9 or 10 makes a game on 15 shots. And that's where I want him to get. So yeah, let's force the issue. I'm right with Arthur on this one. Let's get to, this was a good one here from Dreamscaper in the DBB comments. It says, is the NBA Cup really a good idea? It pushes teams' schedules to have a lot of back-to-back games early on in the season.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a relevant question. We see this pretty much a week off for most teams, and it does mess with the schedules a bit. I think the NBA has a bit to figure out with the schedule, and I understand how they have to work things around because the matchups obviously won't be unknown and everything like that. But it will only be a good thing for the Pistons and the league at large to limit the amount of back-to-backs, especially ones that you have to travel in between. You're never going to fully get away from those unless you decrease the amount of games, which I don't think the league wants to do. But in general, like scheduling aside, I think the NBA Cup is a good idea, mainly just because I enjoy watching it. I think it gives teams something to play for early in the season, and it's an exciting way for young teams to make a statement in this league. As we've seen the past couple years, the best teams are pretty much going to shine through, but it gives a chance for the Pacers in the first season of it to go to the final and play a meaningful game. And we see Wemby and the Spurs, even though Wemby's coming back from an injury, beat the Thunder last night, Saturday night, as we're recording here. So I enjoy it. I think there might be some changes with the scheduling. Maybe do you adjust the knockout round a bit to help that, like trim it down, but trimming it down just makes it that much harder to get there. So I'm not sure how the league is going to do it. And I don't know if they can necessarily like extend the regular season in terms of the calendar, but I think if they could just to loosen the schedule a bit, I think that would only be a positive. And teams that don't make it to the knockout round, they get this pretty much big break at the quarter mark of the season, which I think is only a positive in terms of health, and then just getting that breather as well, which might put the teams that are playing more basketball at a little bit of a disadvantage. But I think it's been a success, mainly just because I enjoy watching it. But I think there could be some improvements schedule wise.
This is one of those things where it feels like to me we just keep having the same conversation over and over again. Like, years ago, almost 10 years ago now, it was the back-to-backs, right? All right, we gotta lengthen the schedule so we can have less back-to-backs. The NBA season used to start up end of October, like into November. Now we've got a whole almost extra month of the year so that we could expand that schedule. And so, okay, now there aren't as many back-to-backs. Well, they adjust the All-Star break a little bit. They, like you just mentioned with this NBA Cup, a lot of teams now majority of teams have this nearly week-long breaks. They've expanded the playoff schedule too, so that there's more break in between games and the games aren't as rapid fire. Like we're doing as a league, we're doing all this stuff to try to give players more rest time, and yet Achilles injuries are up. And now that's a big concern. Well, we're worried about, as Dreamscaper says now, you condense the schedule to start the year so that you can get all these cup games in before the actual early season tournament starts up. And it's just so it's a really difficult topic. And I think at some point, maybe you just need to kind of take it as reality. Like playing basketball is hard and players are going to get hurt. And there's a trade-off, I think, between the style that teams want to play right now, being so fast, up pace, spread out, less physical, and the condensing the schedule a little bit more as well. Because when you play more games, you build up more resistance, but you also build up more of those micro tears as well. When you're playing more fast and less physical, you're taking less hits, but your body's also not used to taking as many hits, and maybe one wrong step and you get some bad luck. It's sports, right? It's like trying to get injuries out of NFL football, and that's an extreme example, but NFL football is dangerous. NBA basketball is dangerous. Basketball at any level is dangerous. It's not, it's not like walking down the street, but like you could get injured walking on the sidewalk too. Like life has risk, and these guys get paid a lot of money to take on that risk and play a game that they love. And I'm not convinced that more rest is the answer to solve the injury problem. The only way to solve the injury issue is to not play the games at all. But then what would be the real point with that? So I think overall the NBA Cup's a really good thing. Adds a lot of competitiveness to these early season games. I mean, if you guys watched that Thunder Spurs game, that was not a normal regular season game. Those guys, that was an intense battle. It was so much fun to watch. The Knicks and Magic, same deal, right? Like it's working. These are competitive games in November and December, which is what you wanted, right? That's what we wanted to see. And does it mean that there are some more back-to-backs early on? Yes. Great. You know, that's a problem, sure. But I don't think getting rid of them is going to solve an injury issue or anything like that. And I guess that kind of brings us over to our last question here, so we can wrap up on this. But, you know, final thoughts on the 10-man rotation. This is B Ballin in our DBB comments says, what are your thoughts on keeping the 10-man rotation and specifically playing Paul Reed more minutes? And we have to paraphrase this, obviously, but he had mentioned that when Cade's minutes go up, turnovers start to come around. So maybe you want to get his minutes down too. And that playing these players less minutes is going to help with the injury concern into the playoffs. So as we're starting to see that 12-man rotation wane a little bit, JB's going away from it. What were your thoughts, and should they continue it?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously as the season goes on and definitely into the playoffs, you're going to want to shorten the rotation. And I think that's JB's preference, is to probably play a 9-man rotation, but things haven't worked out to that point. And that's partly due to injuries, but it's a lot credit due to how some of these guys at the end of the rotation have been playing. So I don't think you're going to see it for the long haul. And Paul Reed specifically, I mean, he's been good in his minutes, but I think as the roster stands and as the rotation works out, like, you're not going to take away minutes from Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart for Paul Reed. And he's still a great option to bring off the bench. And if one of those guys are in early foul trouble, he's a great player to have ready to go. And he seems like he is always ready to go. So I don't think it's going to continue. I think JB wants to shrink it as well, but it's been the depth that this team has. It's been great to see, and it's been working in this short period, but you're going to want to see it go down throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's and with Paul Reed specifically too. It like I want to see him play more because I think he's fun to watch, but him playing more means less Isaiah Stewart. I don't want that. Him playing more means less Jalen Duren. I don't want that. I want more. The Pistons have probably the best 3-man center group in the NBA right now. And I think we have to look at that as a luxury instead of a problem, right? That this is the NBA, and this is a very good Pistons team. The only way you can have a good team is to have a lot of really good players, right? So there are probably 12 or 13 players on the Pistons right now that deserve minutes. If they could go somewhere else, they'd probably be getting minutes. But if they were getting minutes, they won't be winning as many games, right? Like this is this is kind of the trade-off. We're on unusual territory here as Pistons fans. We've not had this as an issue really since that going to work team when they were so deep. And I remember being a kid and thinking that our backups could be starters somewhere else, and we're kind of getting to that now, right? And that means that Karis LeVert can't play 30 minutes a night, even though if you send him somewhere else, he might be close to that. Might be close to that as a sixth man. Jaden Ivey, maybe he can't be a starter here in Detroit because you need Duncan Robinson. And if you send him to Sacramento, Lord knows he'd be starting, right? Things like so we can start playing those games now. And it's a good thing on the one hand, because it means the Pistons are talented and deep. It's a bad thing because it means that there are some deserving players that won't get to play as many minutes on any given night as they might somewhere else. But, I think that they might be okay with that, given the Pistons are first seed in the Eastern Conference right now. And at least if taking today, right, taking stock today, you'd say that the conference finals should be at this point, a reasonable goal, not even a high-end outcome. I think if you're sitting at 20-5 with the way this team's been competing and winning games, with a Cade Cunningham, who's, for my money, probably the best player in the Eastern Conference right now. Giannis is someone who gives him a run, but he can't seem to stay healthy right now. Cade can. Jalen Brunson's a great scorer. I think he's probably a better scorer than Cade, but Cade's a better defender, right? You just look, I think Cade really might be the best player in the East. And, Jalen Duren's a budding star, and this team's that talented. I think that the Eastern Conference Finals are absolutely within reach. So I don't want to go 12-man rotation. I don't even really want to go 11. I think 10's the sweet spot, because at least with 10, you can get 10 players some good minutes, right? If you start going to 11, well, then do we start taking a little bit away from Ron Holland? I don't really want to see Ron play fewer minutes. I don't want to see Jaden Ivey playing fewer minutes. Certainly don't want to take minutes away from Cade, right? Anytime you add someone to the rotation, you have to take from someone else. And, is it even worth it, right? Like for Adanis Jenkins, if sure he could be the 11th guy, but 5 minutes, that's not a long enough to get into a rhythm, right? If he's doing it in 2 stints, maybe like that, that's not a sufficient amount of minutes to really get a flow as a basketball player. So I think it's 10, and you insert players as needed. Stu gets in foul trouble. Great. You got Paul Reed, right? Jaden Ivey starts getting in foul trouble, or God forbid, so, Duncan Robinson sprains his ankle. You got Ivy and Jenkins and Javonte Green that are waiting in the wings and ready to go. So it's a luxury, and it's, good teams are going to have good players that don't play. I think that's kind of where the Pistons are. Real quick, I just wanted to pull it up because I did, while we were doing all this, I was doing a little bit of academic research. I found a research paper on NBA injuries from 15 and 16 to 2021. So this is the period of time where we've pushed back-to-backs away, right? There are fewer back-to-backs in the league, starting in those mid-teens as we've really expanded the schedule. So the number one risk factor that was associated with season-ending injuries, of which knees were by far the most frequent body part, right? So you're talking about soft tissue stuff in the knee, with almost 50% of those injuries. 15.6% were affected. Sorry, that's the wrong. I'm misreading. Here we go. All right, here's what I was looking for. The most significant risk factor associated with injury is minutes per game. The players that are playing the most minutes per game are at higher risk. And the third and fourth quartiles of the year, meaning the players that are playing the most minutes per game, and then stacking those games. So once you're getting into 50, 60, 70 games played as a major minute getter, your risk level goes up. You'll notice none of this is back-to-backs. So I'll just leave it there. So that is an actual research paper from I cannot pronounce these names, a bunch of PhDs and doctors who are far more qualified than any of us. If you want to prevent injuries, tell coaches to stop playing their star players a lot of minutes. Good luck.
Hey, that's great research. So yeah, we'll wrap it there. Shout out to everyone for joining us on a Sunday morning, and if you're listening after we're posted, we're back to a regular NBA schedule, and the Pistons will be back, which we're all excited for. Reminder: you can call our phone line to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.